You're listening to Men of Abundance, episode 178 with Chris Mefford. Are you having fun? If you're not having fun, you're holding yourself back.
Welcome to Men of Abundance, the podcast for those looking to level up their lives by hanging out with some of the greatest leaders and established professionals in our community, living a life of integrity, honor, and the abundance mentality. Prepare to pay it forward with your host, former Army medic turned lifestyle entrepreneur, Wally Carmichael.
What's up, Men of Abundance? I am Wally Carmichael, your founder and host of the Men of Abundance podcast, the Pay It Forward community. And man, you know what? I've talked to so many men, both for the show, off the show. I'm always talking to people, men and women. And one of the things that I've learned for sure with people that are truly struggling to live a life of abundance, or at least live the life that they know they deserve, is so many of them are working so damn hard and they're not having fun. They're not taking time out to relax and have fun. And you might be saying, but Wally, I was always taught to work hard. Work hard. If I work hard, I'll get the things I want in life. And I'm telling you right now, it's BS. It's simply not true. My dad worked hard. He had a hard job. He laid carpet. It beat his body up. He did flooring. I know many other people that work hard their entire life. I mean, they are always working. And they're no further ahead than anybody else who I know is working smart. Putting in the right work is extremely important, but also having fun and relaxing re-energizes your brain, re-energizes your body, and lets you get a much better day's work when you do get back to work. Just yesterday I was watching some videos of Richard Branson. And Richard Branson traveled, and I forget exactly where he went to, but he went to two different countries, basically two different continents, and he visited his grandkids on two different continents in one day. And the first day, he just sat there and he had a picture of him and his grandkids while his grandkids were watching the sunset. Then later on that evening, this is the really cool part, he had himself delivered to his daughter's house where he was able to surprise them when they came in and they opened up the box. And he was sitting inside and he just laughed so hard and he just absolutely loved it. And he talked about this very thing about having fun and how important it is. And it's the most exciting thing that he does throughout his day and throughout his week. Now, again, you might be thinking or saying to yourself, Wally, that's Richard Branson. The guy's a multi-billionaire. He can do whatever the hell he wants. But I'm here to tell you guys, he did that before he was a multi-billionaire. That's how he's grown his business, by having fun and doing what he loves to do. And oh, by the way, not neglecting his family in the process. He's brought them along. He's included them in many cases. Well, that's in part what we're going to talk about today. And before I bring out our featured guest, I want to afford you the opportunity to be abundant in your life today. Share Men of Abundance with everybody you come in contact with, or at least the ones that you like. I say this all the time, guys. It's extremely important for you to share with other people, not for me, but for them. And what's going to happen is they're going to come back and thank you for introducing them to Men of Abundance. So, because while you're enjoying these conversations and you're getting something out of these conversations, I know others will as well. And help other people discover Men of Abundance by leaving a rating and review on iTunes or on whatever podcast player it is that you're listening to. The easiest way for you to do that is to go to menofabundance.com, click on the podcast link, and underneath any one of the podcast players, you'll see some buttons that says iTunes, leave a review. Click on one of those. You'll go directly to iTunes into your account where you can leave a 5-star, 4-star rating and review. I want your honest feedback and your honest review so that we can make this show even better than what it already is. And guys, if you want to get in on the conversation, you can do that in our Men of Abundance community. On Facebook, just go to menofabundance.com, click on the Members Only tab, get access to the Men of Abundance community so that we can have this conversation, we can have these hard discussions, and really make a difference in our own lives, and you'll have an opportunity to make a difference in somebody else's life as well. So let me introduce you to our featured guest. Chris Mefford has done it all. from starting his own company to working for churches, and most recently as a former VP at the Dave Ramsey organization, where he was planning live events and much more. Currently, Chris is the acting COO for Standard Behavior Digital. In his many roles, Chris has had the opportunity to change people's lives by providing clear, actionable strategies to help people make smart business decisions and turn a fledgling department into one of the best in the company. Chris has coached leaders from business and nonprofit organizations nationwide. He offered his expertise and insight to assist senior executives and small business entrepreneurs to build better cultures, turn around underperformance, hire the right employees, know when to let people go, implement efficient processes, manage finances, and implement the organization's mission, all while making money and changing lives. Chris even played a part in helping the Ramsey organization win the Best Place to Work in Nashville award for 8 straight years. In short, Chris knows a lot about business, communication, and leadership. Chris is passionate about sharing his experiences and using his teaching skills to help others create amazing cultures and places to work. Men of Abundance, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Chris Mefford. Chris, welcome to Men of Abundance, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here today.
Where is here? Where are you at in the world?
I am located in San Diego, California. So while the Arctic bomb is going on in the Northeast, it's been 75 and sunny. I love it.
That is no joke right there. I was in Tampa a little over a week ago. Over the holidays and New Year's, and the temperature there I was not prepared for. Not coming from Hawaii, not anywhere. I just did not know. I did not expect it to get that cold in Florida.
No, I think the whole East Coast. I grew up in Ohio, and I went home to visit my family for Christmas, and it was -10, -5. It was bone chilling outside, and I heard on the news the other day that it was the first time since 1961 that New York had been below freezing for 21 straight days.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then I was just watching on the news this morning, and I've rarely watched the news, but I saw a caption, and iguanas are literally falling out of the trees because it's just too cold for them.
Oh man!
Out in Florida in that area.
Yeah.
That's just ridiculous. So before we get too much into our conversation today, Chris, I like to start out with an attitude of gratitude, man. What do you have to be grateful for today?
Oh man, I tell you, I have a lot to be grateful for. Grateful for the warm weather. Grateful for the blessings I've got. And, just came through a wonderful Christmas season with my family, and just so richly blessed to spend time with them, and give a lot of great gifts and receive a lot of great gifts. And I don't want to ever lose sight of the fact that there used to be a time when that stuff didn't happen. And I'm so grateful that it still does.
Yeah, absolutely. Those gift giving, it goes so much more than just Christmas. And for me, it goes throughout the year. Just giving the gift of you, quite frankly, here to Men of Abundance. I absolutely love sharing these conversations and sharing your experiences. And we're going to get into some of that here in just a minute. But before we do, I want to ask you one simple question. Well, it's simple for me to ask, but not so simple for others, for some to answer. And that is, how would you describe yourself?
I'm not sure exactly how to describe myself. I'm a fun guy, if that's what you mean. I like to read. I like to learn. I like my friendships to drive me forward as much as I drive them forward. And if you come into my life and you don't have much to offer me, or I don't have much to offer you, our friendships usually just kind of burn out. So I'm always looking for people that kind of push me and make me better. And that's not for everybody, but those kinds of friendships have kept me from being lazy and just satisfied throughout life.
Got it. Yeah, I dig it. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. We talked about your bio a little bit before we got started here. That's more about what you do. But, get a little bit more deeper into who you are and how you kind of got into what you're doing now.
Well, I got into marketing and advertising. I'm the chief marketing officer at Rock Church in San Diego. And I came to that via working with authors and speakers. I used to work at Dave Ramsey, as you mentioned. And so I did that for 10 years, and I got the opportunity to lead some people. I had about 50 people on my team that I led, and I kind of grew that from about a starting point of 8. We had started doing maybe about 10 events a year, and we grew that to close to 80, 90 different events that we were putting on. And so I started to realize that the stronger I became as a leader and the more I read about leadership, the better prepared I was to handle everything that was coming my way. And so I got very excited and very passionate about the idea of leadership and driving people forward and pushing them to be greater than they ever thought they possibly could. And it charges me up every day to help do that. And I know that's a skill, one, that can be learned, and two, that isn't really cultivated enough. Hopefully we get a chance to talk about it later, but I feel like we really concentrate on the hard skills. Are you good at accounting? Are you good at doing this job or task or administrative? But we really don't concentrate on the soft skills that are really some of the most important skills to help us to not only improve ourselves, but get promotions quicker, to get noticed faster, to get more opportunities in life, to grow your business. And those soft skills are often overlooked. And that's this, how you handle people, how you respond to people, how do you communicate to people, how you present yourself. All of those things kind of play a huge part in our lives and how people perceive us and our opportunities that we're given. And I don't think they're taught enough and trained enough. And so that's what I got very excited in helping other people do and learn.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get deeper into that because that is a huge, huge passion of mine as well. The skills are important, but skills are important for everybody across the board. But to be a great leader, to be a great mentor, to be a great coach, or even a manager, you have to have very strong soft skills. And that sounds like an oxymoron, strong soft skills, but so many people look at these soft skills and they just hear the word soft, and it's touchy-feely, and it's so far from it. It's not easy to take somebody and say, hey, look, you're just not working out here. That's a soft skill. To be able to pull somebody aside and say, hey, look, you're not cutting it right now. I've laid out the ground rules. I've told you what your job is, type of thing. You've got the skill, but you're just not making. Those are soft skills, but those are hard things for some people to do. They skirt around those type of conversations, and they don't know how to have that conversation in the right way.
Right. They just want things to be black and white. Just tell me what, if I can do A, will I get B? And the reality is we're not wired that way. In marketing, we might say people don't buy a product, they buy an identity. Mm-hmm. So stop thinking of yourself or your company, your corporation, or what you do, your services, or how you provide it as simply just a product. If it's just a product, it's a commodity that can be reduced in value. But if you start to create an identity around everything that's happening, people start to come about it. And the identity meaning, why did you buy that watch? Why did you put on those shoes? Why did you get those lenses and those glasses frames? Simply stated something about that spoke to you and you thought it was cool or hip or smart looking or sharp or made you look sophisticated or professional. And so you wanted that identity. It's the essence of Steve Jobs kind of created this identity around Apple that said, hey, you want to change the world? You want to start a revolution? He asked those questions. He didn't simply say, you want to buy a computer. And that's the way I kind of describe, a transitional hard skill versus a soft skill. A hard skill is, can you do accounting? Are you good at math? Will you show up on time every day? A soft skill is convincing people that you have more to offer than meets the eye, that you're more talented and you can help them achieve greatness better and faster than if you were just stuck here in this job in this cubicle doing this one thing over and over again. And so people struggle with getting their head around that because it's a bit ambiguous.
Yeah, it makes so much sense, and this is the type of stuff that I've really been honing my skills on throughout the years. And that's why I love having these conversations with guys like you, because you pretty much wrote the book or you literally wrote the book on hiring and firing for leaders and for pastors. How do you have hiring and firing for pastors? And I got an idea. We were just talking about it, but you talk about soft skills. It just doesn't get stronger than that than hiring and firing from a pastor.
No, right. A lot of people make mistakes. There's so many mistakes when people hire, from how they post a job to how they do the interview process to how many times they talk to people to what they feel like they should hire versus what they want to really deep down hire. And then sometimes they just get lazy and give up and settle. And so I think that's probably the fastest way to ruin. If you're a leader and you have the opportunity and position to hire, you should, definitely take your time. Never be in a hurry. The first minute you get in a hurry is the problem you're going to have. It always amazes me. People say, I need to hire someone fast. But the reality is, if you get somebody in that's terrible, they could be stuck there for 5 years, 10 years. Now, some people might say, well, if they're terrible, I'll just fire them. In which case, you create a toxic environment on your team. Your team sees that people get fired quickly, and so they're always a little nervous and uncertain. And so that's just a terrible mix of how to kind of bring people on board. But if you do it right, and you get the people you want, and you get the people you like and you want to hang out with, you create this environment where you can win titles such as best place to work in the entire city. I worked at a place where we won best place to work for 8 straight years. My team at the church I'm at, we have about 200 employees, and we have multiple departments. We had this Christmas decorating competition, and I wanted to win. And so, I put a team together and inspired them, and we won this silly Christmas competition. But when you get a team that can work together and you're having fun in the process, and you take what you do very seriously, but you don't take yourselves very seriously, nothing is more empowering and energetic and exciting. On Sunday, when you go to bed, you're excited to go into the office on Monday. That's the kind of people you want. That's the kind of environment you want to create. And I'm so tired of traveling all over the country and hearing people tell me that that's impossible, because it's absolutely not impossible. And you know what? You're the problem and you're the solution. You can fix this.
Yeah, it's a challenge that I'm up for, because this is where I thrive. I absolutely love team building. It really, when a team works well together, there's few more amazing feelings to me than having a team work together towards the same goal and at the same time be able to have their own personal agendas fulfilled as well.
Yeah, I mean, I do this exercise with people I coach and teams I coach, and I take a story from the newspaper and I read it out loud, and then I ask 10 questions after I do that, and I to see how well they were listening, and invariably, most people only get about 50% of the questions right, and so. What I do next is I have the team, I get another article and I read another story, but this time I have the team answer it together. And do you know what? Every single time I've done it, 100% of the questions get answered. Yeah, so when you have a team that works together, you have all the answers, you have all the pieces. But as John Maxwell says, or Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great, great companies, great organizations over communicate. That's essentially what is happening in that exercise. You're over communicating, you're oversharing. Everybody has a piece and understanding. And when you work together and you talk together, you really can achieve amazing things. But so many people have difficult team members, or people that are uncertain of how to do things, or they don't really want to be a part of a team, or they're not clear on what the goal is actually. And so that because those pieces are missing, the whole thing struggles and essentially ultimately falls apart, or becomes this amazing frustration for everyone involved.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% agree. And that's the situation that I'm realizing is going on right now, and that's why it's not by chance that you and I are having this conversation today. So I got to ask you, what made you move from Tennessee away from Dave Ramsey and all the other amazing entrepreneurs that I happen to know that are down in Tennessee, Aaron Walker, all these other amazing folks, to San Diego, which, by the way, is another great place for a lot of entrepreneurs and fellow podcasters, quite frankly, in both locations? Yes.
No, I bumped into quite a few here. I would say I did 10 years of events. Like I said earlier, when I started it, I had a small team and a small number of events. And when I left, we had a large number of events and I had a large team that I was leading. And, I got paid the compliment, you took the worst department in our company and you turned it into one of the very best. And so that was high praise from someone who had a book on leadership and business. But I'll be honest with you, after almost 10 years of traveling and grinding out on the road and pushing this thing forward to the point I was tired. I was burned out. It was sort of my kick in the gut moment, if you will, when I realized about 18 months after I should have made a decision that I was just distracted. I was probably doing things that I would never have done earlier in my career, and I just didn't find it exciting or energetic anymore. And it was time for me to go. And when I finally made that decision, it really just changed everything. My entire perspective on life just opened up. The sun came out again, if you will. Mm-hmm. And, if you've ever been to that point, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. And, I used to drive to work and think, man, what would happen if I just missed the exit and just kept driving? And so it was kind of at that point, I'm like, this is unhealthy. It's time for me to move on.
I get it. I respect that too, and that is a hell of a kick in the gut moment, and a common one that few people take action on, like you did. And I respect you for that. And yeah, it's not easy to do. So let's talk a little bit about that. How, when you finally made that decision to make a change in your life, how did that look, and how easy was that for you?
Yeah, it was terrifying. I went, probably sometimes people say, oh, it was such a great thing. I moved from here to there. It was terrifying. I had nothing lined up. I didn't know what I was going to do. Fortunately, I worked for a guy who taught really good personal finance stuff, and I put it into practice. And so I had a good window of time that I could, about 4 or 5 months of savings that I could just kind of work my way through. And I'll be honest with you, the first a month or so, after 2 weeks, I was like, okay, I'm going to start hitting the ground running, trying to figure out what my next steps are. And I was so burned out. I was exhausted. I was in such a bad state. And, a lot of people don't mention this, but I'll mention it because somebody out there might find it useful. And so I started seeing a counselor, and he gave me the best advice. He said, I want you to stop looking for work. I don't want you to do anything. I want you to go play until you're tired of playing. And I'm like, what? He's like, just go see a movie in the middle of the day. Go take a walk in the middle of the day. And so I did. I went the very next day, and I saw a movie like right in the afternoon, right after lunch. And every cell in my body was trying to reject me being there. I felt like I should be doing something. I should be growing something. I should be figuring this thing out. And so I sat there and watched a movie and finished. And I just felt terrible. And the next day I went for a walk at this park, and it was kind of a cold spring day. It was dismal. There was nobody out. I was by myself. But those two things stand out because they really were a turning point where I was like, I came to grips that, hey, I'm so burned out that I can't have fun, and I'm so wired that I can't even figure out how to relax and find something that I enjoy anymore. After those kind of 2 days, I started to say, okay, it's okay if I take a month off and sit here at the pool with my kids and pick them up from school and take them to school and just figure this out slowly. And then I had a couple of authors call. I had some people call and say, hey, would you be interested in coaching me? And it just started to ramp up slowly until I had a company say, hey, there's this organization, this big church out in San Diego. We have about 15,000 members. Would you be, and they're looking for a big executive kind of guy with your skills. Would you be interested in looking at that? And so, my advice is, I guess, is sometimes you can't see the second and third steps. You can just see the first step, but you won't be able to see the second and third step until you get on the first step. And so you've got to be sort of willing to take a few steps without knowing the entire path that's up ahead, and trust God that it's going to work out, and He's got your best interests and you at heart. And that's exactly what I did, and it's worked out amazing.
Man, I love that. And I love that because I completely relate. When I got out of the military after 25 years, I took 4 months and did a whole lot of play. I did little things here and there, but it was so cool when we get into our relaxation point and we just kind of let things go. Just like what happened to you, so much started coming into my life, and so many other opportunities, so many great ideas, and then people started coming into my life, and a lot of connection. And it just made a huge difference to relax and play and do like you did. My wife and I would drive to the other side of the island to another beach, or we'd go to a movie in the middle of the day. Best time to go to the movie, by the way. And, just go out and eat and just sit in the park even. Go grab something to eat at a little steak shop or something, whatever, and just take it to the park and sit in the middle of the park and talk and eat. Just things we hadn't really done a whole lot of before. Even go get a couples massage together. Now we do that on a regular basis. But now coming back into the workforce and doing other things is so much easier. I'm so much more relaxed, and it's because I know I can do that. I know I can go and just have that fun.
Yeah, and you can say, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to do that. I can see myself slipping down there. You just, there's something to be said for experience, but there's also plenty to be said to learning from others about their experiences. Other people had warned me and told me and take a vacation and do this and relax, and you're like, no. But the reality is, I think it ultimately would have helped out a great deal. And who knows what my future would be if I had taken that advice, but I hadn't. And so here I am, and I'm just very glad and very blessed that it all worked out the way it did.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, guys, I've had these conversations. You've listened to many of them, and we've heard so many people like Chris Ducker, Aaron Walker, and I can go on and on with the guys that I've had conversations with that were just literally at burnout. And as soon as they took that time to relax, take their wife out to dinner, to the movie, play with the kids, play with the grandkids, it just, you get rejuvenated. So much more comes into your life than what you had before. And you have a hard time going back to that hard hustle and bustle because you know what real life looks like. You know what it really feels like.
Exactly. Well, you know what I'll say is I think that it made me a better team member and a better leader, especially when it came to hiring. Meaning that I used to feel like I just had, I was looking for this skill and I want to fill this skill. And if this person comes in and they look great on paper, they're going to be great. And, they can complete sentences and they're eager to work here. So let me bring them in. And here's what I missed in that is that I realized that that wasn't a joyful experience that I was creating because these people didn't necessarily mesh on the team. Herb Brooks, the famous U.S. Olympic hockey coach from the 1980 Olympic hockey team, he has this great line, and I don't know whether he actually said it or is it just in the movie Miracle, where he says, look, I'm not looking for the best players, I'm looking for the right players. And I think it's simple to say that, and everyone says, yeah, we need the right players. But what does that look like? And for me, that looked like this. I wanted you skilled, but ultimately would I want to go hang out with you in a restaurant or hang out with you on the road because we were going to do some of that as a team. And so if I didn't like you and I didn't really want to hang out with you, I didn't bring you on the team. And so ultimately what happened was I created this team of people who were like me, that liked me, and we got along great, and they liked each other, and we had this environment and this energy that we just thrived off of. And so putting that in perspective and saying, you know what, I'm in control here. I don't necessarily have to hire you just because you're skilled. I'll give you an example. I was looking for an event producer, and this guy came to me, and he had an MBA, and he had run the event center at one of the universities, and they had actually just had a presidential debate. On paper, he looked amazing, loaded with skills. And so I called him up, and I said, hey, why are you interested in this position? What makes you want to work here? And he says to me, did you not read my cover letter?
Really?
And I was taken back because that's usually where you kind of get the chance to explain out again in your own terms. If you're not a great writer or whatever, it kind of is just sort of a T-ball question I throw out there. And I instantly knew, hey, you know what? You've got a lot of skills, but you and I are probably not going to get along. Like, that response is just weird and strange, and that's just not the kind of people that I want on my team. It sounded like you maybe have an issue with arrogance, or you're a know-it-all or whatever. I've done, not to prejudge if you're out there listening, but I've done a lot of interviews, hundreds, and so I can get a sense of people, not always right and correctly, I admit, but a pretty good sense of people through conversations like that, and that one just stood out to me. And so that's kind of what I mean. On paper, they look great, but they just don't fit. And so you've got to be willing to walk away. I've fallen in love with candidates after the first interview, and by the third interview, I can't stand them. Give yourself some time to, hey, you look great. Your interview's great. You sound great. But are you getting more excited each time you come in and talk to me? Or are you getting frustrated? I want you to be more excited when you come in. I want to see your energy and enthusiasm. And also, the first interview, people tend to be nervous and they're on their A game. If we're judging like a figure skating competition and we're deducting points on how you answer questions or the identity you're presenting, usually in the first interview, people look amazing. By the second or third interview, their guard is down. And you can kind of start to see who they really are, which is why I always like to do 2 or 3 or 4 interviews. A phone interview, an interview in my office is really formal, maybe just a casual coffee interview, to get their guard down and just kind of really see who they are underneath, and if I like them.
Yeah, so many people, I've read so many of these different type of interviews. I love reading the worst interview, or the I can't believe that just happened type of interview responses. And when people come in, the way they come in dressed, eating food, all this kind of stuff. So we can go through all of those. But what does the perfect interview look like for you, kind of from start to finish? This really intrigues me because obviously I've heard of people taking folks out to dinner. because you want to see how they treat the wait staff and how they treat, just people in public and various things. What does that look like? And I know it varies based on the type of position, but what does that perfect interview look like for you?
Well, I'll start off with one of the worst interviews. Just for fun, I had a gal that was coming in, and she had said, "Hey, this is one of my dream jobs. I've always wanted to work here, be a part of this organization. And it'll be amazing." And so we're talking about 5 minutes into the interview, she's crying, and I'm looking around trying to figure out what am I going to do now. And it's in my book. I tell the story, but I was deep down overjoyed that she was crying, not from an insensitive aspect, but overjoyed in that, hey, I dodged a bullet. And so my simple question is, when it comes to interviews, I like to be very candid and very direct. Hey, I noticed that you haven't worked at a place for longer than 2 years. Why is that? Why is it that you were so difficult to respond to my emails? Are you not that interested in the position? Like, be real direct, because you can't be direct enough in interviews like this. You don't know them that well. You need to make sure there's clarity involved. And I had simply asked her, because she came in and she told me that she was tired because her family came to town and they went and saw the opening night movie of one of the Harry Potter movies or something like that. And she didn't get in bed till 3:30 or 4. And so I looked her in the eye and I said, "Are you telling me that on the night before a job interview where you've said this is one of your dream jobs, you stayed out till 3 or 4 in the morning?" And she started to cry. And, I think she started to cry probably because I did sort of, called her out on some poor decision making. But it also demonstrated, she would bring some of that poor decision making into the office. And being transparent and simply just stating what I was thinking as it related to our professional work relationship, in that situation was really good. Now, I did feel bad for her that she was crying, but the reality was, she wouldn't have been a great candidate. And I need to protect my team that I'm trying to build, and the people that are there just as much as they would want me to. Okay, to answer your question, what am I looking for? I would probably start. Look at the cover letter first. Cover letters matter to me. Are you conscientious? Your resume, is it loaded with errors? Does it look professionally done? Meaning, does it just look like it's nice? It doesn't look like it was kind of slapped together. And these days with all the editing tools and grammar tools and best friends, you shouldn't have a single grammar mistake on a resume. And so that kind of speaks to your thoroughness and the quality of work you might do. I'm not so concerned necessarily in your resume, just at the top of what it looks like. Work experience, I'm just kind of looking at it to see, are you interesting? What goes into it? And then, I want to see what you're like. So once I look at your resume and I determine if I like you and you look like a good candidate, and your cover letter has a little bit of personality to it, that you clearly have made it just for me versus just a generic one, I'm probably going to go straight to social media. I'm going to look at your LinkedIn page. I'm going to find you on Facebook, because I'm going to get a really good sense of your personality and what you're like on your tweets and stuff like that. And some people won't give that to me, and that's fine. But you're not going to work for me, because I need to examine what your personality is like. I'm going to bring you on a team, and I'm going to give you a lot of money potentially, and I'm going to spend a lot of time with you, and I want to make sure that we're going to get along. I like knowing through multiple interviews, like I said, that you're committed to what we're working on. How much do you know about us? What makes you excited to work here? That seems like a simple question, but I can't tell you how many times people are like, well, and they give me a standard answer where you realize that you just know they haven't gotten any research on you. And so if you're really that serious about working here, you would have found that out. And so what that means, Wally, is are you passionate? Are you going to fight in the trenches when times get hard with me because you're passionate about what we're doing and how we're doing it? Or are you here for a job? Because if you're here for a job, when the going gets tough, you're not going to be tough. You're going to move on. And I need people that have my back and that I want to fight for as well when it gets going. And so, asking a lot of questions, asking a lot of probing questions, asking them about their life. What was the most difficult decision they ever made, and how did they arrive at that decision? I love this pageant question I always ask. What's the toughest question, or what's the toughest issue facing our country today, and why? I call it my pageant question, and I'll tell you, most of the guys fail at that as much as the gals, even though it's a pageant. question. And I like that because it's out of left field. It doesn't specifically relate to anything in the business world that we're talking about, but it's a question in a tense interview where you sometimes can be stressed. And it's kind of complex. You can't give me a yes or no or work on your experience. It has to be well thought out. So how quickly can you think on your feet? And sometimes I ask it and I know it's just going to bomb, and sometimes I'm very impressed. I love the question, are you lucky? Would you consider yourself lucky? And a lot of times people say they feel blessed, which is fine. It's the same way. But I find people who consider themselves lucky or blessed tend to be better prepared for opportunities and better prepared for life. So if you say I'm not lucky, I haven't been lucky in anything, chances are you're not. Now, all these are related together. I wouldn't make a hire based on one of these two answers, but in that sense, I'm always looking for ways to kind of dig deep, open-ended questions, things like that. I actually have 20 great interview questions on my website that you can go to and find out. It's at chrismefford.com/abundance. And you get the book, and you can get the audio book and the ebook and all those questions that you should ask on interviews if you go to there and download it. But I feel like I'm talking a lot.
No, you are. And I'm just soaking it all up. And I was going to ask you that too, because if you asked me if I was lucky, I'm just going to be straightforward with you. I would say, well, the more prepared I am, the luckier I am. The luckier I feel, because it's all about being prepared as far as I'm concerned. What would you say to that? And I know you just don't lump them all in together. It's all a cumulative conversation as you're bringing it all together, not based off of one question, like you said. But how would you rate that answer?
You're better prepared. That's what I'm going for. I'm trying to determine if you are prepared. And so if you consider yourself lucky or you consider yourself prepared for opportunity, it's the same thing in my mind. And so that would be a great answer.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So, and I was going to also ask you that as far as, the book is concerned, some of these questions you would ask, what would be the best responses? And we don't have a lot of time to go through that right now, but I'm assuming some of that would be in your book and the audio that you're talking about. Yeah,
all of it.
Perfect.
All of it's in there. I have like 30 or 40 questions. And it's about creating an environment. I heard a phrase once or I came across it, and it was, one team is better than one person. And just to be clear, that there's a very different saying than 5 is better than 1.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
In light of the national championship game happened last night, and it dawned on me as they were talking about Nick Saban and Alabama's win. And I'm an Ohio State fan because I grew up there as well. But Nick Saban and Urban Meyer at Ohio State, they both won national titles in their second years at their universities. And so it made me think that these guys essentially rolled in and with some other coach's team who had done such a poor job that they got fired or removed, and then essentially took those players and became the very best team in the nation. I mean, that speaks to me about, it has nothing to do with skill as much as it has to do with leadership, passion, and conviction, and getting that crew moving in the right direction all at the same time. And that's kind of what the goal is when it comes to leadership, when it comes to creating an environment of an amazing team culture, or hiring people, or even firing people, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard that term before: hire slow, fire fast. But and that's kind of what you're talking about, and I really, really dig it, man. We could go on and on about this.
Actually, let me just jump in there, because I have a different philosophy, and it's hire slow and fire slow. Mm-hmm. I brought a person onto my team early on, and I said, hey, they've been here for a month or so. They're just not getting it. I think it's time for them to move on. And my boss looked at me and he said, you know what? She's not the problem. You are. And I went, what do you mean? He's like, well, she has a different personality style than you. And I talk about this as well, the different personality styles a lot. But the gist was, he was right. She was very detailed, which is what I needed. And I was more of the big picture visionary guy. And I wanted her to do that. But the reality was I needed her to be detailed. But I didn't want to communicate to her in a way that she understood. And so she was frustrated at that. And so we just weren't connecting. And so finally, it was clear I was going to have to deal with this. I said, hey, I'll tell you what, let's meet halfway. I'm going to give you more details at the outset and during this process, but I'm going to need you to take those and run with it. And she did, and we did amazing things together. And it made me think really right on, hire fast or hire slow, fire fast is sometimes if you give people the benefit of the doubt and you haven't trained them, or you haven't given the opportunity, you're not talking to them in a way they understand, that's not useful, because the hiring process takes forever. Bringing them in and training them, and you lose money on that. And I think probably the thing that stood out to me was you hired them, you fixed them. And so it really made how I hired way different. And I think it would make a lot of people think differently if you said, hey, once you bring them on board, they're going to be difficult to get out of here. So I bet you're going to take time now. I bet you're going to be thorough. I bet you're going to seek out the best candidates if you know you can't just get rid of them. And if that's the case, why wouldn't you do that from the outset? Save yourself heartache, stress, and money, and go and create this awesome and amazing culture that you can create.
Right. Yeah. And if you don't give them the right expectations and the right training and stuff, that makes a whole lot of sense. Thanks for clarifying that. That's very, very powerful.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. I'm serious about that, because I feel like it's not fair to you, and it's not fair to them, and it's not fair to the organization.
Correct.
So let's get this right on the front end, so you don't have to do that as often on the back end. Because firing someone, even if it's justified, is no fun. Mm-hmm. And so let's just get the right people in and never have to fire anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So, brother, we are at the point where we're going to pay it forward. You ready to do that?
Yes.
Excellent. So share 1 to 3 actionable steps with men of abundance that they can take today.
I'll tell you what, I think be patient, and know that not just when you're trying to figure out your leadership, that, be bold and take that first step. Be patient in knowing that it's all going to work out. Be understanding that the fear you feel is not a gift of the Spirit. People don't, fear is not something that God puts in us. Trust is what he wants from us. And so that's what I want you to take away. I want you to take away the understanding that you are maybe the problem, but you're also the solution to your problems and your challenges that lay ahead. And so you have 100% control of your environment and your experience and how you do things. And I want you to remember that and take that forward. And then finally, I want you to remember that soft skills are important. And if you could remember one thing and one piece of advice I give people, and it's like you have one customer in your life, one customer, and that customer is your leader and your boss. And you may be over here working really hard and wondering why your boss never notices. And it could very well be because you've never had a conversation with your boss or your leader that said, hey, what does winning look like for you, and can I help you win in the role that you're playing? And if you do that, that will be the fastest way to a transition into success that you'll ever find, because your leader will start to notice how invaluable you are to him and that team, or her and that team, and move you forward. So remembering those things, I think, can help everyone go a long ways.
Man, that is extremely powerful, Chris. Thanks for sharing that. What daily habits make the biggest impact in your life?
Reading. Definitely reading. John Maxwell talks about this, the law of leadership lit, or whatever, however you say that. And your team won't outgrow you. And so if you're a bad communicator, your team is going to be a bad communicator. If you show up late all the time, your team's going to show up late all the time. And so if I can read and just be constantly learning, there's a chance that some of the weaknesses will turn into some strengths, and that I will continue to have some resources and the ability to negotiate through the difficult, challenging things that lay ahead. And so I read voraciously all the time, maybe 30 books a year or so, business books, leadership books. I'll throw in some fiction. But, I will admit as well, I cheat. And here's how I cheat. I listen to books too. I have about a 30-minute drive, and I go to the gym and I work out and I listen to books. And so that's kind of, I'm usually reading one and listening to one at the same time. And it's probably been the best thing that I've done for my career, is to continually be learning and growing and digesting podcasts such as this. It's a great service that you provide. And so please don't go make the same mistakes everybody else has. Any mistake you make today is not going to be unique to the world. And so go read yourself some stuff, go listen to some stuff, and then take that advice and implement it into your lives.
Yeah, that's a very powerful thing you shared there at the end, was to take action on the stuff that you're reading. Is what I get from that. And I don't call it cheating. I definitely devour more or consume more audiobooks than I do physical books, just because I'm always listening to an audiobook or a podcast. I think I've listened to from beginning of December to this point, I've listened to 5 books, and actually it's 3 books because I think 2 of them I re-listened to. So yeah, I consume a lot of audiobooks.
And that's why I put my book into an audiobook format. Is I was doing a lot of these podcasts, and I had like the e-reader, and you could buy the book on Amazon, and I thought, well, that's silly. Everyone's listening to podcasts. What if I just made it into an audiobook? So I did that as well. And again, you can get that at chrismefford.com/abundance. You just sign up for my email list, and I'll give you the book for free. And it's not a cheap. It's not like a ebook. It's like 200 pages. It's a solid quality book. But I just love helping your listeners find out everything I've done, and learn from me, and I'm happy to do that. And if they want to hear more from me, I'm happy to help them as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I will have that linked up in the show notes at Men of Abundance, and I will personally be definitely getting the audiobook, and it's a requirement these days as far as I'm concerned. Many times I will listen to an audiobook, and if it's the type of book that I want to get more facts from, I want to take notes in, like the book Abundance by Peter Diamandis or Prosperous Coach, many of them out there, I will get the physical book as well after I've listened to it. And that way I can go back through it, take the notes, and have it as a reference. Because it's easier to reference physical books.
You know what I do, Wally?
Go ahead.
Totally. I have figured this out. If I have audiobooks that I love, Amazon has those used books, and oftentimes I can get a used book for a penny, or maybe $2 or $3, and it takes 2 weeks to ship or whatever it might be, and that's what I do. So I don't go and buy the bookstore version at $30 a pop. I just go get the used version and put it on my bookshelf. I love it.
Excellent idea. I absolutely love that. I've been purchasing the $30 books, so I will definitely go do some of that as well. Speaking of which, what are you reading or listening to now that you'd recommend to our abundant leaders, and why? Other than your books, of course, which I'm sure they'll be picking up.
Yes, my books are amazing. Please go buy them right away, hundreds of them, and give them to your friends. I have a few books that I like. Right now I'm reading a book called Speak Like Churchill, Stand Like Lincoln. And it's a book on public speaking, and it's, Churchill sort of had this persona that he was so good with, and especially there's a new movie out about him. That he could just resonate. He was so in touch with his audience whenever he spoke. And Lincoln just had this resolve that he was going to stand there and he was going to lead, and he didn't have to say much to get people to follow him. The Gettysburg Address we're all familiar with, but what makes that so great, if you remember, is the guy that spoke before him spoke for 2 hours and he spoke for 3 minutes. So the idea, and so I love that. Probably one of the biggest books that changed my life was a book called Lynchpin by Seth Godin. And in it, I didn't even finish the book. I got it was about a third of the way in, and in it, he tells a story about how if you ask most leaders or most managers or most bosses what they want in their ideal employee or team member, they'll often say, well, I just want someone who shows up on time, doesn't create any drama, and does their work. And he kind of put a period there, and I thought about that, and then he wrote this next sentence, which changed my life. He said, but those types of players never get promoted. That's what they want, but they're not pushing the team to greatness. They're not pushing the envelope. They're not creating amazing opportunities for growth and service reach and things like that. Steve Jobs and Pablo Picasso and all these great artists and writers and entrepreneurs and inventors, they didn't just show up and do their job and not create drama. And so, healthy drama, healthy meaning, let's have some spirited debate on if this is the right decision. Let's have some spirited debate on where we should head as a company, not, the bad kind of drama we're all familiar with. And so Lynchpin for me really changed things. And then another book called Insanely Simple, which is a gentleman who worked at Chiat Day, which was the ad agency for Apple computers. And he tells a lot of stories that are really interesting, because I feel like a lot of people look at large corporations and say, well, I can't learn from them. They're not like us. And the stories he tells in there are just very simple, like how to run a meeting, how Steve Jobs ran a meeting and what he did. And he kept it small, and he kicked people out, even if they came from the agency, because they were going to present something and would send a message, you're going to come prepared, and we're just going to keep this between us. Like, we're not going to let this mission creep come in. And you know what? I don't care if no one's ever going to see the inside of the machine. We're still going to do it this way, and it's going to be awesome. And yes, I understand the packaging can get out of hand, but it's the identity that we're trying to create, and we're gonna be passionate about making sure our use. And so lots of things that I learned that you could simply do. It was called Insanely Simple, and I really love that book because it spoke to me in ways that you just don't think about from a large corporation, because sometimes we see these icons and just believe they got lucky or that the timing was right, and you fail to understand that what they did is a process that can be recreated and often should be recreated over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's all good information, and I'm definitely going to have that linked up in the show notes. And some linchpin, I have not read that book at all, but Seth Godin is so highly recommended. I've been on his blog for a while, but I definitely got to get a hold of that as well because I love reading stuff like that.
I tell you, I had a good story the other day happened to me. I was in an event, and I gave this gentleman a free ticket to one of our events, and he thanked me, sent me a gift card and thanked me. And then a couple of months later, we were doing an event in New York City that included Dave and Gary Vaynerchuk, who's the big social media guy, if you're not familiar with him, and Seth Godin.
Absolutely.
And so I reached out to him and I said, hey, I know you liked, you had a good time with the business stuff, or he reached out to me, I can't remember. And I said, hey, I want to comp you a ticket. And they were expensive tickets, but I said, if you can get to New York, he's out of Pittsburgh, I'll leave one for you. Just as a sort of he wasn't a buddy, he wasn't a family member, just being nice, because I remembered he and his wife were trying to start their photography business. Well, as it turns out, he had become like the head photographer for the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so he comes to the event and he meets Seth and he does all this, and he reaches out to me in the last couple of weeks. And he says, hey, I'm coming to town. I want to thank you. You gave me that ticket to that event, and it inspired me to finally write and produce my book. And so it's out there, and I got Seth Godin to endorse the book. And none of this would have happened if you wouldn't have been so generous. And it just, I didn't do it for any payback. There's nothing in it for me. And I feel like sometimes if you do things, like if you help enough people, you never have to worry about money. You never have to worry about friends. You never have to worry about work. And so that mentality is sometimes overlooked because we have this me mentality that goes in the world, and we sometimes feel even taken advantage of if we have to do things over and over again. But eventually, if you help enough people, you never have to worry about anything else.
That is a very, very true statement. What do you feel holds most people back from living a life of true abundance?
Fear. They're afraid of what they might accomplish. They're afraid of the success they might find. They're afraid that leaving the comfortable confines of their current life will be missed, and it will be difficult. And so I like to help people overcome that fear by a variety of different ways. But, I think if you embrace the fear, if you understand the fear, if you trust the fear and trust where you're being led and where you're being called, only great things can come from that. Only great things.
I found that, and that's a very common answer. And what I found in talking to guys is some of the things that they fear that may happen, I reassure them that chances are it's going to happen. So expect it. Be prepared for it mentally. And even in a physical sense, you can be prepared for it. Because are people going to talk about you? Sure. Maybe. And let's just say it does happen. And what's next? What's that going to do to you in that situation? Well, nothing. It might make me feel bad or something, but what's it do for what you're doing? I mean, really, just confront it now, because chances are it might happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's a shame and maybe a sense of pride, a misunderstanding, a shame. I saw my wife dragged me to see The Greatest Showman, which is about P.T. Barnum. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about the history or anything of him, but the history from the movie, which I'm sure is probably somewhat inaccurate, but nevertheless, the story itself was, here's a guy that no one thought would amount to anything, and he had this dream, and everyone laughed at him because he wanted to do this circus. He wanted to open up this museum of weird novelty type stuff, and here he goes on to make it really big and become one of the wealthiest men in America as a result. But in addition to that, he still never gained respect because people felt like he was just a showman, a shyster. But P.T. Barnum embraced it, and that's who he was, and he didn't have a problem with himself. If you did, it didn't matter to him.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's kind of where we need to go. And so I feel like sometimes God is calling us do things, and our sense of pride or our sense of understanding, we're hearing this voice that people will laugh at you and they won't take you serious and you can't possibly do this, and they let that overwhelm them with what God's calling them to greatness. And so they step away out of a misunderstanding, out of a sense of pride, and obviously out of a sense of fear.
Yeah, absolutely. So what does living a life of abundance look like to you? What does that mean to you?
I think that I'm making a difference in the world, that I'm making a difference in people's lives, that I'm doing work that impacts beyond just a dollars and cents type of revenue, that if I wrote a book that someone found it useful, that if I sent out a Facebook post for our team where we boosted it, that someone came in and then got saved, or that inspired someone to start a ministry or write a book. Because I think a life of abundance to me is the life of abundance that I'd want to live. So if this is what I want to live, how can I make that also possible for others around me? And so it's sort of a win-win, a life of abundance. And I guess, a life of abundance would be a win-win. Am I helping others? Are they helping me?
It absolutely is, 100%. Man, we're going to close this up. I can go on and on with this conversation. It's been a great conversation. We talked about a lot of things, but what did we not talk about that you would like to ensure our abundant leaders get out of our conversation?
Oh, I think we talked a lot about many things. I'm feeling all over the board. I would probably say it came down to this for me. When I wanted to succeed, and I wanted to achieve the things I felt I was being called to do, and I wanted to achieve the things I wanted to do more than I cared about what you thought about me. That's when I had a dramatic shift in my life. When I said that, the solution is when I decided to win more than I wanted people to like me. And that doesn't mean I didn't want people to like me or I wanted to be a jerk or mean. It just meant I was no longer going to be concerned about you holding me back from what I knew clearly would be successful. And so you can either get on board with that, or you can leave me alone, or you can get out of the way. But I'm moving forward.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely. So, Chris, we're going to have chrismefford.com/abundance linked up in the show notes. How else can our abundant leaders get a hold of you if there's any other way than that?
You can get a hold of me at chris@chrismefford.com as well. I answer all my email. Doesn't go to any filter. CHRISMEFF as in Frank, ORD.com.
Outstanding. We're going to have that linked up over there. Guys, take advantage of the books. Get the audio book. Get everything that Chris has got going on. You can get much more of this conversation through his books and through his information and through his website. Chris, has been a pleasure, man. I truly enjoyed this conversation. Now go out and live your life of abundance, brother, and keep paying it forward.
Oh, thank you. Same to you.
Aloha. All right, guys, like we mentioned in the conversation, man, it is very, very important. It's vital to your daily activities at work, on the business, at home, to learn those soft skills and strengthen and master those soft skills. And by doing so, you're going to be able to have so much more fun and be much more relaxed in doing what you do on a daily basis. And I, for one, greatly appreciate everything you do. And I want you to be able to do it at the best of your ability, peak performance every single day. Well, it's not going to be peak performance every day, got that, but at least giving it a chance to be the best that you can possibly be every day and add massive value to the people around you and the people in your life. Now, go out and live your life of abundance and make sure to pay it forward.
That's all for today, Abundance Leaders. For more about our guests and the powerful information we shared with you today, be sure to sign up for our mailing list at menofabundance.com. We appreciate your time and look forward to hanging out with you on our next episode. So until then, be sure to pay it forward and live your life of abundance.